Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis show. Oh man, it just keeps getting funner and funner. The funniest, and just having a good time. And we're joined by a couple of inventors, entrepreneurs, founders, and first names are first namers. That's what we're going to say is first namers, because we got Jules and Stace joining us today to talk about business, creating something to solve a problem that you're passionate about, and if I understood right, that Dad just loved the idea of it. So welcome to the show, you two. I can't wait to get into this a bit.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here for sure.
Yeah. Well, so first off, I always love understanding when you see a problem, and Cameron and I've talked about this several times over the years, the garage solution. But you took the garage solution that I think it was Jules, that was your dad who had the vision for the thing, yep. Right?
Yeah.
And then you made it into something, and we're brave enough to share it with the public. What was that just caused you to take that leap into the public eye, if you will?
Yeah. So, gosh, it's a long story. It's actually a 23-year-old story, but we'll keep it really as succinct as possible for your listeners and your show. So yeah, my dad and mom were sitting on the do we need, sorry, I know that the internet is a little messy. Cam, is there something you want us to do about that? I mean, it's
and you have everything closed out?
Yeah, except for
I'm trying to do it through
yeah. Sorry, I know, because I didn't want to go the whole show and it be super wonky. I can try to go through our hotspot.
Yeah, the old buildings, it's amazing, because whether it's all the layers of lead paint or how thick the walls are, can do a number on Wi-Fi.
I know.
Yeah, it's really skipping.
All right. Your internet connection is unstable. All right. I'm connected to my phone now.
Okay.
That might be better, because y'all's internet was great for the 15-minute call when you were in the middle of nowhere in the RV.
I know.
Well, we have Wi-Fi on our RV, so that's
yeah.
it actually works sometimes.
But I mean, we won't know until we get into it, I guess. So let's leave it connected to the hotspot, and then I'll just keep talking. And if you guys want to cut it off, you cut it off. Okay.
All right. So let's see, you were starting to tell the story, the 23 years in the making. So.
Yeah. So thanks for asking, Otis. It's actually a 23-year-old story. And my mom and dad were sitting on the boardwalk up in Bethany Beach, Delaware, and they saw a single mom coming off the beach with 3 kids, and she was just miserable. I mean, carrying everything and trying to manage the kids. And so my mom and dad had that like light bulb moment where they said, what if we invented, and they're not inventors, they're not engineers, they're not any of that.
But they did have 6 kids.
But they had 6 kids, so it came out of their own need, right? Which is where the best products come from.
Yep.
And so they invented this lounger. If you flipped it up the other way, it became a dolly. And that was before beach wagons and, beach carts and all that stuff. And so my dad got it patented and tried to take it to market, and just ran out of money and know-how. And that was before Google. So it was really hard to take a product to market back then, I mean, hard in different ways. And so it just sat on the shelf.
Driving in the car, I bet.
That's right. A lot of yellow pages and, all. But yeah, so he just let it sit on the shelf. And so 12 years later, I was working for PricewaterhouseCoopers as a business management consultant. And I once got tired of working 80 hours a week for somebody else. And so I remembered my mom and dad's idea and called up my dad 8:30 that morning. I'll never forget it. And said, Dad, what would you think about me trying to take your product to market? And I'll never forget it. He started crying and said, honey, that would be a dream come true. He said, I'll give you everything. So he assigned the patent over to me, gave me his drawings, which, now were super Frankenstein. The whole thing was one big piece of plastic. And, but it was the concept that was brilliant. And so I ended up partnering with a manufacturing firm, sold them 60% of my company. And 6 months in, I realized it wasn't a good partnership. And so 2 years in, I stuck with it for 2 years and then walked away from my own company. And they ended up dissolving my company, not the parent company, but my company. And so that was really, truly, that was the second best day of that company, right? When I knew that I was free and clear from them and that. But Stace and I had been really in 2016, 2017-ish, we started sort of talking about what if we took this back and completely redesigned it again and went to market, in our opinion, the right way, where we don't give away control. And because it's our passion, right? I mean, the inventor is the one who has the passion around it. So for at least a while, the inventor needs to be in control of the decisions of the company. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we did. So we completely redesigned it into the 5-in-1 transforming unit that it is now, called the Wanderer. And we started shipping in June of this last year. And we're off to the races, which is really exciting.
What was that? Those first couple days, like I don't even, you could say the first couple days of business, but after that 8:30 in the morning phone call, you got the patent over and everything. How prepared were you for that first stretch of the business there? Because it seems like that would be one of those things where it's like, wow, this is a great idea, let's go do it. And then you get the patent in the mail and you're like, all right, what the hell do I do now? And
that's exactly right. I always say I was just smart enough to think I could do it, and I was just dumb enough to think I could do it. Because I did have experience with consulting with a bunch of companies, but that was really in people and change. Both Stace and I are super relational, so people and change is really important to both of us, and strategy, but not like how to take a product to market. So it was a lot of trial and error, but I did partner with a colleague of mine from PwC who was a mentor and still is a dear friend of mine, but he and I partnered together, and he had the manufacturing experience. And so I brought him in. So that's where I was just smart enough to surround myself with smarter people. And so, yeah, so he and I together sort of figured it out. Growing up with 6 kids, I'm very much a team player. I don't do anything on my own. And so that's why Stace is really important. My old business partner, John, was really important. Partnering with the right people is just always sort of my kryptonite, right? Which makes you stronger. So it's always been my secret. Yeah. Isn't kryptonite good? No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Well,
maybe for the right person.
Superman, kryptonite's not good.
So then let's say that the opposite of kryptonite, that's
there
what
you
they
Everything but kryptonite makes you strong.
I need to go back and watch Superman again.
I want to add in there, because I think this is a very important piece. When Jules walked away from her own company in 2014, she wrote the resignation letter on her way back from winning awards at the National Hardware Show, which was huge. And we had talked about it. She didn't just come home and say, honey, I quit. But we had talked about it because I had seen how it was. I had witnessed it on the outside of how it was going with that other company. And it was not pretty. It was not fun. It was actually, it just angered me of how she was treated. And so, but she came home. I had a corporate job that, I was able to take care of the family enough, but she started working at on the shrimp docks. Now, for $10 an hour. So it went from making in the, six figures to $10 an hour, and because she needed to heal her soul. She was broken at that point. She had literally been beat to the ground, broken, and the only way she could look was up. But she had to go to a place, and salt air just heals your soul, but you're around salt of the earth people. I mean, the shrimpers are the hardest workers we can ever be around. And so she went and we actually went out shrimping with one of the shrimpers, and ended up, she worked at his shrimp dock, delving out shrimp for $10 an hour for about 9 months, just to kind of regroup. And then what we always say, that I got tired of her coming home smelling like shrimp. So, and she needed to be challenged. And so that's when we actually opened up a business consulting firm called A Salty Rim. We have a salt thing going on in our life. So,
but honestly, I would have paid them to get to work for them. Like, I would have paid them just because it was such a good experience for me. I guess I'm always drawn to nature. So here I am with an outdoor company, but yeah.
Well, and you touched on something, and I really like to dive into this, because this is a unique perspective we can get, is inside from your perspective, Jules, and then Stace looking and seeing, is that values issue. Because I talk with, I do a lot of coaching of soon to be veterans. And one of the things I always, help them understand is that their values have to align with the company and teams that they're going to work for. Yeah. And you obviously had that, that conflict was going on. So how did you realize it was that bad, that it was bad enough to, because you were pretty comfy, right? Cash flow, things were feeling pretty good. Well, not feeling pretty good, but the bank account was doing good, right?
Yeah.
How did you come to terms with dealing with that?
Yeah, from external purposes, people would look at me and go, "You are a fool to walk away from that." Honestly, because you're exactly right. It was comfy. I was taking my dream, my parents' dream. Like, I was sort of the golden child, right? Doing all this. But it did not, my soul did not match up with who I was partnered with. And, right, wrong, or indifferent, they do business their way, I do business my way, and it just didn't match up. It did not align. And so for me, I remember coming on the plane ride home, and writing a 3-page resignation letter. Most people are like, "I'm done," or don't even write a resignation letter. But for me, I needed them to know why I was walking away from this, because it was a really big walk away. And I didn't get a response, which, is to be expected, I guess. But it was a really hard thing. But I knew, it's just, I always say, pay attention to your gut. If you've been raised with principles and values and knowing in your soul what is right and wrong, pay attention to your gut. And if your gut says, don't do that or do that, listen, it will pay you back in dividends, I believe, in the future. And so it was the hardest thing, but it was my only choice, honestly, at that point, that I felt like.
Yeah, Stace, I want to hear your perspective, because, watching her deal with that, and what did you see? Because that's a, I've been there where you were at, Jules. That's why I'm doing what I do now, because I had that same issue with some other organizations. I didn't know it, and I finally figured that out, kind of like you. I didn't write no 3-page resignation letter.
It was a little overkill. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna admit.
She's a woman of many words.
Mine was more like 3 lines. I'm like, "Thank you very much. I'm out."
Take this job and shove it. I think they wrote a song about that.
Yeah.
It was hard. I was work for a nonprofit at the time, and was very successful in my job, and actually was valued in my job. And so it was very hard, because I knew our values were so much aligned, to sit there and watch her go through this. And unfortunately, it was, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it was a lot of men trying. She was the only woman in the business. And it was, and they were just controlling. They were trying to control everything. So anytime she was like running a marathon, and every time she'd get 2 steps forward, they chop another part of her leg off, and she could not, she could not continue to run. And as wild, I mean, she would go to these trade shows and she would go to these events and win like huge awards for the whole shows. And, you know, best new product, best new invention, whatever. And, you know, I think that that company got in their own way of creating something super successful with Jules, because Jules is the story. I mean, her family is the story. Now we are the story. So, you know, anyone, if they want to be a partner with us, they need to embrace that story and know that they can't do it without us. This is our, we have the passion behind it.
Yeah.
So it was so hard to watch, but I think that just to watch her get beat down, and I was on some of those calls. I listened in, and I was just like, how can you sit here and take this and knowing that you're not going to be successful with them? And she had to get to that point, you know, and I just had to sit back and, as much as I can, and I'm not good at holding my tongue, as much as I could hold my tongue and let her come to that on her own decision. And when she did, I was there to, you know, support that and whatever she needed to do.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that we've ever answered it, like had to answer it like that from both of our perspectives. But it's a really insightful question, I think, because we approached it very differently, but came together in supporting each other through how we were dealing with it.
Yeah. Well, and I noticed on OME, you have your values on there. I don't think you called, did you call them principles, or I don't remember if you can use the word value, but that is so important. And the reason I'm harping on this is not only with the veterans, but also with other entrepreneurs, of how important that is, that, you know, there's an inherentness to it, that when you bring more people into the team, they've got to buy into those things. They've got to, it has to align with them.
Yeah. So we have our coaching firm, Salty Rim, and that's what we coach in businesses, small businesses. And it's really about any relationship. If you're in a personal relationship or a business relationship, your values have to align. And even if one is off a little bit, I mean, it's not going to work. I mean, it's making that foundation extremely unstable. I mean, it's just like, you know, your back's out of alignment. You got to go get it fixed, you know, and so it just doesn't work if any one value. And we teach this in relationship coaching as well as business coaching, is write out your values and be picky and be very, very specific on those values. And if someone does not align, even if there's that red flag, in the United States, a yellow light always turns red. And so we want, you know, and then you always give it 6 months, because at some point there's going to be, if it can look like it's a perfect match, and then within 6 months something may come out of alignment. And so that's how we kind of approach things. And one of our values, and when we're hiring people on our staff, is if we can't we sit down and have a cocktail or beer with you, probably not going to be or a cup of coffee and have a conversation. I mean, I think that's also huge for us, because we're such relationship people.
Yeah. To me, I think that's like you think a lot about the what and the how inside of a business, and people think that's like the biggest parts there, but then the values are really like that why that keeps you moving forward on that. And I love what you're saying there, because it makes you think of one of my first business ventures, where business partner, I thought we were aligned on all of these different categories. And it was basically like the what and the how were all like on the exact same page, but the values of why we were doing it were completely different. And I was something looking back on, I recognized it partway through and went, well, as long as we're working in the same direction, things will work out. And then when the rubber hit the road, you got that phone call that morning, Dad. Things, when it came down to it, decisions were being made that were complete opposite of what I would have done, but because his values aligned so differently than mine. So I think that's really important to look at it from that way. It's not just the how and the what of the business, but the why of you're doing it, because that why will eventually matter. And when it does, that's not necessarily going to be a very fun time if you're not very aligned on that.
100%. I couldn't agree more with everything you just said.
So
go ahead,
Kim. I was
Okay,
gonna jump
so
into manufacturing.
oh, well, okay, well, I'm on there with you.
All right.
So actually, it's a little bit of a segue. So I was going back into more of the process, the creative process for y'all. How do you keep the necessity aspect of inventing still part of the business when it's no longer necessarily necessity driven? We talked about garage problem solving. Okay, you solved the problem of the garage. Now you have a business. How do you keep that same kind of an energy and approach to it as you're on that, bigger scale?
Great. So another great question. So Stace is over all of our new product development and over our manufacturing. So that's her lane that she drives in really well. And we actually have a whole roadmap of products. And so the Wander is our first product, but we always say we're not a one-hit wonder. Right. And
Come
so
Oh, throwing out the dad jokes early.
but that's the first product that's come out, but we're super excited of bringing out the next iterations or totally different products, but in the same kind of outdoor gear line. And so that's how we do it. And since we've just started coming to market in June, everything is still really new. Like we got our first big purchase order partner with True Value. So we're going to be in all 14 of their DCs across the US. And really it's this year is going to be our year for massive ramp up. Because when people see this product, we get one of three reactions. It's either it's always a wow, but then it's either I wish I would have thought of that, or a holy, I don't know if you can cuss on this, but SH, whatever. But
we're all adults here.
That's right. But it's literally one of those three reactions because it is true innovation. It's not, we've taken something and tweaked it and made it better. There literally is nothing like this in the world. And so that's it. It's every day is really exciting still. And the necessity comes from the new products that Stace is working on every day.
So Stace, how do you think you can, and be going a little bit forward looking, you crush it this year, you crush it next year. How are you going to keep that necessity aspect in there? I mean, is it as simple as you use every product you create, so you're always fidgeting with it? Is it that simple?
It is. It absolutely. But we also look at my background is occupational therapy. So, as a therapist in that world, you're always looking to create solutions to problems. Because you have different disabilities, and so you're having to figure out ways to create and habilitate someone so they can live normally, as normal as possible in life. But it's just the Wander. It was a 5-in-1. Now it's transformed into like an 8-in-1. Because we also, what we did, we were like, okay, we can put kayaks on this. So we developed straps to hold your kayaks. And which are huge game changer for us. We went to a paddleboard. You can put kayaks and paddleboards, and we actually put a bigger kayak on it and use the armrest. And so it's just so it could sit up higher, but it's just being forward thinking as you're out doing things. It's like, so we were creating some different things that will fit onto the Wander. I can't really say because right now a lot of it's secret. We're things that attach to the Wander that so it's not just another seating apparatus or another cart. It's things that we can add to our existing product that will make it better or reach a broader audience. So it's it's really listening to the consumers too and say, hey, what about this? Absolutely, let us figure it out. And so we get a lot of feedback from our customers to say, do you have this? And look, nope, but we can figure it out and let's do it. But one of our biggest things coming out, not this year, because we really need to focus on the Wander, is we're really, since my background is seating and positioning, we're working on a beach wheelchair, because so many people want to get their children or their young adults who they can no longer carry, or they don't want to put them in a wagon, but they want to make them look cool, and they don't want to be in PVC wheelchairs. And with our wheels that can roll on sand, they can get their mom or their dad or their loved one out to the beach easily. So it's something that we are working on, is to bring that to market in the next year or so.
And I, before you go, Dad, I want to point out, because it's something we talk about in a lot of different, with a lot of different entrepreneurs, of, you know, wanting to expand into other areas, but making sure you're not kind of, you know, putting wow, I almost said putting out too many fires at once. That is not a phrase. Sorry, y'all. But you know, you get what I mean.
That's your kryptonite.
But what I love that y'all did is you solved this problem in kind of a niche of, you know, well, we have the sand wheels and it fits into this, you know, specific area. You talked about, you know, family trips to beach and that kind of stuff. And then you said, okay, well, there's the guy with the kayak. If we can just make that adjustment, boom, then we're on to that one. And you just kind of slowly branched out to those other aspects of the market. And I really love that approach, because you're staying true to the core thing. You're not abandoning it at all, but yet you're still looking into those other little bits of markets and trying to expand it that way. So I just think that's a really great lesson for other entrepreneurs out there.
Awesome. Thanks. So we're doing something right.
Well, I'm gonna
At least one thing.
I'll throw the blanket on the fire then. Okay. So the wet blanket, you're going, so how do you stop? I mean, because I've seen this in, geez, almost every entrepreneur I've ever coached or mentored. It is, how do you stop the shiny object chase? You know, how are you, you know, that, because you said it almost to the, almost like an inclination to yourself. We got to stay focused on this. We got to do, is that your technique? How are you doing it? Because I've got several that I've used over the years, but I want to know how you keep from getting that, ooh, cool, look at this, and run over here.
I think because of our team, I mean, to me, I love creating and I love inventing, and I have my sketch pad with me all the time, and I'm always trying to come up with new things. But I think Jules keeps me grounded on that. Money also keeps me grounded on that, you know, being able to have the funding to get it, you know, to go after a new product or design a new product. And I think that's where, you know, our values also, I mean, we know the Wanderer needs to be out in the market, and then we can push on to these other things, but the Wanderer has to fund these other things. So, you know, we're not going to go and raise money on a new project. We'll continue to grow this and make ourselves and really focus on tweaking the Wanderer as much. I mean, right now we feel like it's perfect, but I'm sure that there's things that we're going to find that we need to change. And so I think that's it, is we do have a team that keeps us very grounded. And that's huge for us. And for me, especially, it keeps me like tied down, and instead of a big helium balloon flying everywhere.
Got a rope on you, huh? Holding you back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when did you, I mean, you started, it was just the two of y'all. When did you kind of realize, I think you mentioned a mentor from PwC that had been kind of like guiding you. When did you kind of start to say, all right, well, we got to put some more folks on the team? How did you cross that threshold?
Oh man, well, my brother Clay has been involved in this since my dad invented it. So he has done all the branding for all the different companies, and has done all the creative. And so all credit for making us look as professional as he does goes to him, to Clay. He's amazing. But we were at a point where back in 2018, I think, where Stace and I were, and again, this is not 2017, this is not at all male bashing, because we need good men around us. But we had one too many older men want to
Like
take
me?
over this idea. Yeah, I mean, honestly, so we just had so many people have a hard time with us being the inventors and the founders, you know, and it be our story. And so we got to the point where I was like, I want to take the latest prototype that we have, put it on a boat, go a mile offshore with a bottle of champagne, and toast all that we've done and leave it out there in the ocean. That's really where we were. But I was on a walk in our neighborhood with my golden retriever, who's now passed. But one of my neighbors, I ran into her and she said, so what's going on with that beach thing that you've got? And I was like, ugh, Like and she caught me at like just the right or just the wrong moment where I just said, we're done with it. And she goes, wait a second, would you do coffee with me, myself and my business partner? And we said, I was like, ugh, get in line, one more person who wants to be involved with this. But we did. And Stace and I went and had coffee with them. And they said, we think we can help you. We think we have the business experience, the financial experience that you need to come in and be a part of what you're doing. And so she's now a silent partner, but Bob is and older, and he'll say he brings our age up, exponentially, but not exponentially. He's not that old. He's like an older brother. Yeah, he's an older brother. And we really adore Bob. But he came on board and is part owner in our company. And we tell him that it was because of him that we're still doing what we're doing. And so that was monumental and pivotal for us. And so he came on, brought on a woman that works with him who has become just a dear, dear friend of ours, but she's the glue of OME. Her name's Jacqueline. And so we added her, or Bob added her, which was the greatest gift he could have given us. And then we added our lead sales guy, who has years and years of experience as national sales with Gillette. And so he has come on board, and a bunch of other brands that you would know, but he's come on board and is leading our sales strategy and growth. And so that team of 6 people is everything to us. They're our family, they're our friends, they're the ones who keep us grounded. But we could not do this without them.
And back to our sales guy, we met him in 2013 at a trade show when she was with her other company, the previous company, and met him and have kept in touch. And finally we were able to talk him in, bribe him with enough Tito's to come on board with us. And he came in as a consultant last May, and now he's like, I want to be a part of this. And so but we, years and years of vetting him to finally get him to have a business so he can come and work with us, because he's salt of the earth as well. But yeah, our team is rock stars.
So it's been a hard evolution. I mean, a really hard evolution of this thing to be where it is right now. But the momentum has shifted, and that in an entrepreneur's life, that is everything, right? When you keep going, most entrepreneurs give up right before the change in momentum. And we haven't. And so now we're getting to experience some of the fruits of that. And this year we're going to get to experience a lot of the fruits, which is exciting.
I always think of when you say that most entrepreneurs quit right before that. I always, first thing jumps into my mind is Sarah Blakely with her Spanx. I don't remember how many stores she went to, but it was 30 or something like that. And I always think, well, how do you know it wouldn't, it was going to be 31 or maybe it was 35, maybe it was 42. And that's some tough decisions though. Those are tough life decisions. And how did you, I mean, was it just the true inner belief that kept pushing y'all forward or what? Because you had a couple of, like you said, I'm going to put this thing to rest at the bottom of the ocean, you had a couple of those moments. What was it that just kept pulling you?
Honestly, every time we demo this thing, it's one thing if your friends and family are like, oh, that's cool. But when the outside public, every single person we demo it to, it's a wow. And if we got paid $10 for every time somebody said, when are you going on Shark Tank? I mean, literally, so many people say that to us. So when you're getting externally validated as much as we are for a product like ours, we can't quit, because we're like, if everybody is saying you're onto something and crap, I wish I would have thought of that, then for us to give up before the momentum shifts would have been just insane. But I think being in it together, we talked about partnership early on. Cam, you were talking about that. Stace and I, we have this saying that sometimes I have to sit in the red wagon and she pulls me. And then other times she has to sit in it and I pull her. And thankfully, we've never been in a point where we're both, well, we both have had to sit in the red wagon and then we're like putting our hands down and sort of like flintstoning ourselves forward. But most of the time, one of us, it can pull each other. And so that having a good partnership it's really truly a good partnership, and a team is everything. I mean, for us, it's been the fuel in our tank.
I think we should do our best to try to solve this. And I'm not sure how well this is going to go, y'all, but there's something we've talked about on the show a few times. I like to call problem solving fever. And to give the little bit of background, it comes from the term bush fever from our favorite survival guy, Les Stroud. He talks about getting lost in the woods and how you keep telling yourself,
I love Les. I love him.
He's the best. He's the best.
Yeah.
But so you're familiar with bush fever then. You tell yourself your campsite's over the next hill and you just keep saying next hill, next hill, next hill. And that's the thing that kills people when they get lost in the woods, because they keep going further and further away from their campsite rather than if they had just stayed put. And so I've started to apply that to the entrepreneurial life, where it's, you get so used to putting out fires, to solving problems, that you just keep solving that next problem. And you're never really sure if you're going in the right direction. You might just be pushing off in the middle of nowhere. And so when we're talking about, pushing through until that momentum changes, my mind immediately went to that problem solving fever of, well, what if you just keep solving problems and it's not the right problem, or you're not pushing in the right direction? And so I want to see how, for Jules, Stace, Otis, how can you as an entrepreneur balance this desire to keep moving and keep solving those problems with some sort of realistic, like, okay, hey, maybe now's the stopping point, or hey, the momentum's right over there. Like, what, how can we, in that metaphor, where can we get a compass? Where can we get a map? Like, how do we begin to solve this problem solving fever?
For some reason, I just thought about the company Apple. It's an evolution, right? They're always solving new problems. They're always coming up with a new phone, because the new phone is always going to do something better. And so they started out with Apple 1, and what are we on, 17 now, or 102? I don't know. But each iteration gets better. And I think that's what's for us. I mean, if you look at from when it started, her dad's design, to when Jules picked it up, to some and the iterations that it went through until that went to market, and then when we picked it up, and some iterations that we came up with, and now to this, to our prototype, to now what we're selling, to but each, I think it's just, that's what keeps us going forward, but we're still solving the same problem. It's just right now we're solving the same problem of making sure that people can get outdoors easily. That's our focus. What makes people get out? And I think that's how
that's our compass.
That's our compass. Exactly. How can we make the outdoors easy for people to get out and do? And so OME, outdoors made easy. Oceans, mountains, earth. And so we want to make it easy for everyone in any situation. And so that is our compass, to make sure that we're staying on that path.
I 100% agree with Stace. I would answer it differently, just because my mind thinks differently. But I agree with that. My thought is, while we really care about the wanderer, our goal is not the product. Our goal is to build a platform of influence. And so the product happens to be a means to an end for us, right? And so our compass with the product is, because that's what we have to focus on, is 100% that outdoors made easy. So it's a yes and of what Stace and I are saying, is we have to focus on that. But there's a bigger driving force in both of us that aligns so perfectly, that we want to create a platform for impact and influence. And so we want to help other entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs, because it's a hard journey, navigate the challenges of taking a product to market or even taking a service to market. And so we can't give up. It's literally a calling inside of us that the Wanderer happens to be what we've been given to get there. But the calling is our compass, where it's like we have to keep going and solving problems. And at the end of the day, we might go, man, I'm not sure if that was the right decision, but then we quickly pivot, right? And sorry about that. We quickly pivot and go another way. So I think it's kind of yes and, where we've got a really big calling on us with this. And I'm not sure that we know exactly how that's going to play out, but we have to keep walking forward.
And what I hear is that you refer to it as your compass, but your purpose, to use the terminology we always use, and that's what guides you, and that's a powerful thing, because everybody talks about Simon Sinek and his start with why statement, and I always got to throw in, hey, in the military, we've been doing it that way a long time, because we always start with, what do we want to achieve and why do we want to achieve it, end state and intent.
Yeah.
But,
He just marketed it.
He did. Well, kind of, yeah, we weren't that good at that in the Army. So, yeah, think about how good the Army would be now. Wow. No,
Right.
that's a digression yeah. But it is that thing, that every morning, when you step down, yeah, the Wanderer may be that thing that enables it, but that's what it is. It enables that purpose. It's not the device, if you will, not to belittle it, but the device
100%.
does not fulfill it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's the thing that makes you go to the 35th store and say, this is what I want to do. And I don't, not to belittle, not to dive back into Sarah, because I don't know her story that well. I just know that with Spanx, she did a lot of stores, but I have to believe that she had to have had something more pulling her to go see another store, some other deeper belief rather than I got these britches that I want to sell,
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think that's how do you test? Yeah, I think that's the way I'll put it. How do you test your people that you're bringing in to the team on those things? How do you sense? I think Stace, you mentioned give it 6 months, like a 6-month test. Is that one of your means, or do you have some other processes? Because one of the things that I get from business owners all the time is hiring the right people. How do I hire the right people? What's the process? All those sort of things. So do you have a process? Do you have a concept of how you kind of filter those folks?
Yeah,
Go
you
ahead.
want to answer that? Gosh, I would like to say it's an intuitive thing that Stace and I just know. And that's not really helpful. But both of our intuitions are really strong. We're very dialed into relationships. However, with that said, we have brought on people who are no longer a part of our team. That does not mean they do not fit our family. They absolutely fit our family. It's just that life took them in a different direction, or took us in a different direction, right? And so there's a quote that I just recently heard by Robert Frost: never cut what you can untie. And that's so important to us, where we've been burnt a lot. I mean, we only told you like the tip of the iceberg of ways that we've been sort of burnt through this company. But we really attempt to never cut what we can untie, because you never know, 6 months or 6 years from now, that might be a connection that can be retied in a different way. So I don't know that we really, everybody on our team right now has been sort of organic. Obviously my brother, our business partner, he brought in Jacqueline, and then Joe, like Stace said, we've been nurturing a relationship with him since 2013, and everybody on our team right now is salt of the earth. So I don't know. Do you have a different answer to that?
I don't. And I would have answered it exactly the same way. And even with contractors that we've brought in, we've had to let go.
Ooh,
And we've had a lot of them, PR firms, marketing firms that just, it's not that they're not good. They just didn't, we figured out early on after spending a lot of money, even 6 months in, you're still spending a lot of money with bringing in contractors and firms that they just didn't align with us. It doesn't mean they're bad people. They just weren't, they didn't have what we needed to propel us forward. But what they did was they were the stepping stone to get somewhere, to the next person, the next agency, to where now we think we're able to dial it in a little bit better, and figure out and how to tweak. I like the compass analogy, is how to dial in our compass a little bit more to figure out who we need. So now our new PR firm, marketing firm, all they do is focus on the outdoor space. That's what we needed. We didn't need a boutique, all women led that are into cookies and apparel. We need an outdoor gear company that are a PR firm that focused on the outdoors. And so, but that fluffy one got us to where we are now. So they're all little stepping stones to get us a little bit higher and where we need to be.
Yeah, well, and I think especially, when you're starting up, you can't necessarily communicate those things well. That's why it winds up being intuition. And especially if you have a partnership, then that intuition is, much more locked in than if you just have one person thinking, I like this guy. But that if you can't really, communicate what that is, even if you do have your values and those type of things, it's hard to communicate. Like, I'm sure even I could see on your face, Stace, as you're talking about some of those different people you've worked with. They're good people. It just wasn't quite right. And you still might not be able to say what it was that was wrong necessarily with them, or that why it didn't work, but you could tell it wasn't working. And so I think as much as we want to boil that aspect down to a science, as how much we like to do that with business, I think that's one where it kind of has to stay with a little bit of that intuition, because you're not necessarily going to be able to define what it looks like because the company is so young.
Yeah. We again, our team, we lean into them as well too. So it's not just Stace and I that make hiring decisions. We lean into our team because we think the power of a group is pretty strong. So if any one of them have any issue, we will talk through it. And if it's glaring enough, then we won't move forward.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing when you get that team environment, and like you said, you build that team up, because then as a leader, you can also just go check with the rest of the team, because they're all bought in on that environment and that culture. We have this conversation with Duffy the other day, Dad, talking about college rugby, how you get a kid from high school comes out and the coaches might tour them around campus, think it's really good, and then you drop off with the boys for a little bit and you just say, okay, yes or no. And they might not be able to, communicate it either, what was wrong, but it's like that, it's not going to be a fit, or it just doesn't fit in right. It's not going to go well, whatever it is. And they might not be able to communicate it. We as the coaches might not be able to communicate it, but it's an important aspect there.
I've never thought of it that way, Cam. And I love that. And I remember it being a part of college sports, and you would always have the recruits coming in, and then they would drop them off with the team and we'd show them a good time. But I think that looking back, the coach weighed his decision heavily on if they're going to match as a team, because it's a team sport. It's different if it's a golf recruit, and that's pretty much a single person sport. But when you're softball or basketball or volleyball, those were the women's sports in college where I went. That was very important, and I never even realized that until now, that's what the coach was doing. He was seeing if this person was a fit for the team, and they could have been the best player in the state, but if they didn't fit in the team, no one was going to be successful.
Dad, you could probably tell me who said this, but it's the whole, if he comes here, he's going to beat our team every single day. If he goes across, if he goes for us, it would be ASU or GCU. If he goes over there, then he's only going to beat us once a year.
It was Bo Schembechler.
Bo Schembechler. That's it.
Schembechler said that in an interview when reporters were asking him about why he didn't get that blue chipper, in Michigan to play for his team. And that was exactly what he said. If he's here, he beats us every day. He goes to Ohio State, he only gets to beat us once. And you think about that, and when you bring people into your team, that's a pretty powerful
Yeah, it is.
way of looking at things. I want to jump, and we've alluded to it, or y'all have, what's going on this year, and the big tour, the Wanderer Tour. I'll just call it Wandering with the Wanderer. I'm going to start just throwing out. I better stop. It's really bad here any second. But what is going on in the double twos for y'all with the Wanderer? I mean, I know some little bits, but share it with the team, with the audience.
Yeah. So back in March of last year, we sold our house because the manufacturer that we were using overseas, we couldn't pay him. So raising funds for female entrepreneurs is really challenging, which is a whole other podcast in itself. I think the stats are 2.7% of all funds raised go to women founders. And 1.7 of that goes to women in tech. And so 1% of all funds raised go to female founders. If you add this is a really interesting stat, and I have I can prove it. I can send you the links, but if you add a male to your co-founding team, you're 15% more likely to get funding. Just by adding a male to a two female. Yeah. So the stats are crazy. So raising funds has been really challenging for us. But we came to a point in March where the manufacturer shipped over our product. We couldn't pay him. And so he hid it in a warehouse in Utah, hid 2,500 Wanderers in a warehouse in Utah. And so we just said, well, how all in are we? We have equity in our house. And so we ended up selling our home. The market was obviously really hot. So we sold our home and we were like, okay, now where are we going to live? Because it sold before we even listed it. And so we ended up living in an Airbnb for, a couple of months. And we moved, we either sold or donated all of our stuff, except for a storage unit full that we have back there. So we ended up going, you know what, we're going to buy an RV. We're going to take the show on the road. So we did. We bought we're buying. We didn't buy it. We're buying it, financing it, and we wrapped it in our branding. And so we have a rolling billboard that we're traveling the U.S. for 18 months. We left in May. Left Charleston, South Carolina's home for us. We left in May, and we're currently in San Diego, California. Olive is her name. The RV named after Stace's grandmom, Nanny, who traveled in an RV and was a road warrior. So we thought we would have some good juju by naming her Olive. So so that's what we're doing. So we will be on the road for the rest of this year, and plan on being back in Charleston the end of this year, beginning of next year. But really just attending festivals, events, trade shows, meeting with buyers, meeting with customers, literally in RV parks, where we are using our own products, obviously. And so we always get to strike up conversations. So that's kind of the road trip part of it. And, as far as growing, we've got a lot of really exciting announcements coming with big brands that you have heard of, where the Wanderer will be sold.
Like big box store things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So back when I was a child, many moons ago, I would always visit a friend of mine, and her dad used to work for the railroad company, and he had this plaque, and it was this acronym, and what it stood for is you can't sell freight sitting on your ass. And that has always resonated with me. And I'm not a huge salesperson, but I'm an evangelist. So this to me is this is the ultimate way to be an evangelist for my own company, and sell, putting our money where our mouth is too, to say, all right, we have an option here. We can sit in an Airbnb for the next 18 months or rent an apartment or whatever, or we can actually hit the road. And where is our time and our money going to be best spent? And it's really on the road. I mean, we have made so many connections here on the road, and I mean, we have a big QR code on our RV. So people walk up all the time and are like, going down the road, Jules will see people reach out their window and scan the QR code. It's really cool.
I was driving. So I do all the driving in the RV, and
Yeah.
it's really challenging. It's like one of the most challenging things that I've done is driving this RV, towing a car behind us. And that again is a whole other
gosh.
podcast, but
Yeah.
but I'll be driving and you have to keep it. It's more like 9 and 3, not 10 and 2, because the wheel's so big. So I'm driving and I have to keep my eyes on the road, because one little swerve off and the rumble strips on the side, if you get caught in those, because it's such a big, you're fighting it to bring it back over. So I have to stay focused on the prize, which is right ahead.
It's making my palms sweat.
But-
I'm just talking about
yeah.
it.
But there was I just sort of was like, okay, this is why we're doing what we're doing. There was this guy in a Land Rover, black Land Rover, that was driving next to us, and he slowed down. So he slowed down enough that I was like, okay, I'm paying attention. So I'm holding and I'm like looking over real quick, like kind of doing this. And all of a sudden he's driving by himself in the Land Rover, and I see him take his phone as he's driving, lean over and scan the QR code and put his phone down and do this to me. And I was like, that's it. Like, that's exactly why we're doing this. We have no idea the impact that this trip is doing. And Stace and we were just talking about this last week, where I think we have an addiction, but it's a positive addiction to telling good stories. And so we put ourselves in places and positions to tell a good story. And so being on this RV is just all part of that, where it's telling a pretty great story.
You told a pretty great story here too, I gotta say.
Well, how do people follow that story? I mean, I'm visualizing the what was it, National Lampoon's Vacation, where they do the animation of driving across the country to Wally World or whatever that was. Do you have do you have some blog or podcast or whatever y'all
Go to
do?
trackolive.com.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Yeah, no, we have a blog. You go to our website, we have a blog, obviously social media and through Instagram. I'm not Instagrammer, but OME Gear is Instagram, Facebook. We also have a group. It's called OME Gear Insiders. And that's a group that it kind of
Facebook group.
It's a private Facebook group. You have to ask to join. You have to be cool. Like, you can't be mean in there. And it's really Jules and I, telling people things like they all knew about True Value before the world did. So it's in kind of telling them where we are on our journey. We've done some very personal posts on there, but when we were on America's Big Deal, we did a video before from our green room that everybody in that group saw. So, that's ways to keep up with us. But our blog and
our website links all like our podcast. We have a podcast called Do It in Nature. And we've been on it once or twice, but that's linked there. All our social media is linked there. So it's just omegear.com.
That's awesome. I love the simplicity to it. And I just might have to do if y'all ain't doing it, I might have to set me up a little board over here with pens and things like that.
So in our blog, we actually do post a picture, just like you're talking about, where it maps out our entire route.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, that's fun. It kind of got me thinking maybe I want to do that. I keep looking over on the wall over there because the map ain't there. I can tell you that right now. So it's funny to look it over there.
We were going to put a map up in Olive, but there's not a lot of room. There's not a lot of space in an RV. In our RV, there are in some of these massive ones. Ours is not massive, so we had to do it. We had to get creative and do one on our blog. Yep.
That's cool. That's cool.
Otis is about to pitch in our next Tribe and Purpose meeting that I get in my little Honda and drive around the country so he can have fun with his map, marking where I am.
Yes. Love it. I'm looking.
You just got to figure out what the hell I can sell while I'm driving around.
With Tribe and Purpose stuff. Yeah.
There we go.
Hey, it's
double the value of the car.
I recommend if anybody can do it, they should do it, because it's been that, and a podcast has been honestly two of the most powerful things for telling our story. I was looking for a picture of the RV.
As much as that was a joke, I am a little jealous of the having a product where you can actually go around and do that, because that does seem like so much fun.
Yeah.
Well, right now, in this moment, I mean, we're not honestly, I mean, for your viewers and your listeners, we're not sitting in our grandmother's house. We're sitting in a little inn in a very, very small town, population of like 800 in California. But we drove our car up to Oregon and then taking the Wanderer and coming back down the PCH. But I mean, we would have never had the opportunity to do this if we were not where we're doing what we're doing.
So there, since it's a video podcast, that's our RV that we're
Oh,
in.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, a little plug for KOA there.
So now we're in the car driving down the PCH, which we would not recommend, and Olive would not make it down the PCH.
No, we recommend the drive down the PCH,
Yeah.
just not in an RV.
Not in an RV.
Yeah.
Some people do it. I don't know how they do it, but no. But it is absolutely gorgeous. And OME has afforded us the opportunity, the Wanderer has afforded us the opportunity to get out here in God's nature and see it and live it. And it took us 7 hours to go 182 miles the other day because we stopped every 15 minutes just because it was a different view.
That was amazing.
And just to watch the sunsets but being able to do that and have the Wanderer yesterday we spent most of the day in the redwood forest, seeing these massive trees. So just
awesome.
being able to do that in our car, not in Olive. Our car's name is Perline. We name everything. And so like I said, we're in the small inn. We didn't even map it out. We're literally going as far as we can, stopping, trying to find an inn and staying along the way.
Mhm.
That's awesome. I love that. And that sense of adventure is just exciting. I mean, I hear that. And then the other thing I'll pull into it is the name that you have for your consulting firm, your business coaching firm, the now I lost it, where to go, Salty Rim. You're meeting with the salt of America, the salt of the earth of America, and going around and doing that. So that's, man, what a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of salt.
A lot of salt, a lot of margaritas, I think.
A lot of margaritas.
When y'all come through Tucson, come on.
Hey, we're coming.
We're definitely reaching out to you.
We'll have the margaritas ready. Don't worry.
We've
I
already
love
set
it.
it up. We love the KOA and they're in Tucson, so we'll be there.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to tell you a lot of nuggets that I picked up today. I'm going to go to one that really kind of hit home was the Robert Frost quote, because it's a different way of talking about, don't burn bridges.
Yeah.
And at least that's my interpretation of what his quote is, to never cut what you can untie, which is just a cool way. It's a much nicer way of saying don't burn bridges.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a much nicer, friendlier way of saying that. But there's so much truth to that, right? I mean, golly, you go around making enemies. Man, good luck. Good luck.
right.
Making things. So, Camden, what'd you learn?
Using purpose as the compass to help defeat the problem solving fever. I really like that, because to take that another step further, if what you're working on, the problems you're solving don't work, and you kind of fall into that problem solving fever, if you trust the compass, if you trust purpose, it'll get there eventually. The path's going to look different, but if you trust purpose, you trust your compass, you'll get there eventually. So I love that. And we cured problem solving fever. So I can write my book now, Dad.
There you go.
It's going to be a short book. Might be a lot of pictures.
All right. It's been a while since we've had two guests, so I'm going to let y'all decide who gets to go first on what you learn.
Here we go.
Right.
I learned that I'm really drawn to people who ask good questions. I sense like my spirit is drawn to both of you, because you're curious, right? And you think, and you're not listening so that you can respond. You're listening so that it can soak in and you can apply what you're listening to or ask a clarifying question. So I love that. So thank you guys.
Hey,
Man, I love that answer. I know I can't use it.
no dittos.
No dittos. Yeah, I think having the opportunity, I learned that, first of all, I learned that there are a lot of good people in this earth.
Hmm. I would finish the sentence for
I
you, but I
know.
don't know where you go.
And
Tears are good.
tears are good.
And you're a much prettier crier than I am.
I'm learning I'm learning to tell our story differently, but I love what Jules said. There's people like you guys that actually do care and want to hear the story, and changing the perspective and how we're learning how to tell it in a different way. And I can't remember the writer who talked about in this book, and he talks about, do you see, when you have a can of sardines and Vienna sausages, do you see it as a can of sardines and Vienna sausages sitting on a beach? Or do you look at it as surf and turf watching a beautiful sunset? And your questions made me change my perspective on how we're telling our story. So that's what I learned.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
You could get me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why I'm emotional, but thank you.
Well, great. This has been amazing. I'm excited to see where y'all end up, and watch y'all traverse your adventure with Olive across the country, and start seeing the Wanderer pop up in the shops that are just down the road from here. I'm pretty excited about that. That is huge. That's so exciting for y'all, and I'm so happy for y'all. Thank y'all so much for sharing the story and taking your time out, just that little bit of time to spend with us in this adventure y'all have. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate the goodness you're putting out in the world.
Well, thanks. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our guests, Jules and Stace, for joining us today, and our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. You can check out recent episodes of the Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.